Chancellor, you spoke about your decision this budget to increase your headroom to around about 22 billion. We had a discussion about headroom in the spring statement, where you said to me that everyone would like more headroom, but no one wants more taxes, no one wants lower spending. I think we have the balance about right. And you gave me variations to that answer 3 times. Do you accept now that actually you got that balance wrong in the spring?
Well, I increased taxes by £40 billion in the budget last year, and I don't remember any party clamouring for more tax increases. And in fact, I think the Liberal Democrats oppose most of the ones that we are trying to take forward. So I did think we got the balance about right last year, but I was really clear that one of the objectives of this budget was to build further resilience and we were able to do that with £21.7 billion of headroom.
I know it seems esoteric, but I mean we've had reports coming out that saying that the inflated debt costs to the UK are worth about £7 billion a year. And we've all reflected on the speculation that's gone around this budget in terms of tax measures for the last 6 months, the policy uncertainty perhaps putting off investment as well. And so you obviously felt the need to correct the level of headroom this time. So why was it not a mistake previously to maintain a low amount of headroom in the spring?
Well, headroom went as low as £6.5 billion in the last Parliament. I built it up to £9.9 billion in my budget last year and in the spring statement. I felt that was the right approach. But obviously, since then, we have had a number of global shocks. Whether those are shocks to trade, whether those are ongoing conflicts, whether those are disruptions to supply chains. And as a result, I believed it was the right thing to increase that headroom further to £21.7 billion, given the world in which we live today.
I think that was clear in last spring, but to move on to the second decision
wait,
taken.
That's not
the case.
Can
I ask my next question?
Well, just because when people come back and say, well, that was the case in the spring.
I asked these exact questions in the spring because you had to do a fiscal repair job in the spring, obviously. We did have Trump's election already take place at that time. You had already lost the headroom between the autumn and the spring. So I think it's fair to say that many people thought that headroom was already low in the spring. You've decided to correct it this time, but you're telling me it wasn't a mistake not to correct it in the spring.
Well, in the spring, the headroom would have been eroded without the actions that I took. I took the actions to keep the headroom at around £10 billion. But since then, you'll remember, the tariffs were introduced by Donald Trump that had not happened, and the OBR had not factored those into their forecasts in the spring. So I think things have changed since then, with respect, Mr. Dean.
I'd like to move on also to the decision to move towards one formal assessment by the OBR as well. Again, back in the spring, you said, some people were saying, don't worry about the headroom, you can address it in the autumn. I felt that would be the wrong decision because we've been very clear in our manifesto and our election campaign, and since we came to office, that fiscal stability is so important. So it's my understanding now that you're not going to make any adaptations based on what happened to headroom in the spring. So does that mean that fiscal stability is no longer important, or was that an incorrect statement to make in the spring?
Well, it does link to your previous question, Mr. Dean, because in the previous question you asked about the level of the headroom. We've now taken that to £21.7 billion, which, as you know, is more than the average movement in headroom between forecasts. So I now believe that we have the buffer in place.
The buffer enables you to make that decision.
So
can I just push you on the next question, which is, what circumstances would you feel like you would need to make adjustments in a spring statement? So 22 billion definitely gives you more buffer room, but is an erosion of 5 billion, 10 billion, 15 billion too much? At what point would you act in the spring instead of the autumn to address the headroom, which everybody will still be able to see whether or not a formal assessment is taking place?
So very few countries have 2 fiscal events a year, and we want to move towards, as the IMF have recommended, to have 1 major fiscal event a year. And we've worked with the OBR.
So in answer to Mr. Dean's question, if you may, just on where you would make judgment.
At what point would you give yourself more headroom? understand that.
Yeah, we've
and
got the
then you
question.
said you're not going to take any
So
action
the
till
Chancellor's had the
autumn.
question, so
Yeah,
if you
fine.
could just answer the question, Chancellor.
Yes, if you give me that opportunity, I'd be delighted to. I reserve the right to be able to take action at any point, but I believe the headroom that we have and the changes that we've made means that I won't need to do that in the spring. But of course, I reserve the right at any time to take action.
Thank you for now.
Just following on from that question about the squeeze from Israel, there's been some analysis done since the budget about the impact on the 1% or even the 0.1%, and people claim that if you look at those categories, it's not as distributive as the Treasury's graphs present. Mr. Bowler, do you do any analysis, distributional analysis, in regards to the 1% or 0.1% internally?
Well, we do. No, we do. Our focus is on the distribution analysis we do, which is really, really rather good, I have to say. I'm very proud of it. It's deeply thorough. It's been complimented for how we do it and the level we get into. All the rest of it, we've done it for some time in that way. So that's the focus we do, and it focuses on deciles. I don't know whether Darmish has any more to say on that.
So we focus on deciles, as the PEMSEC says. We don't have the data on a consistent basis to be able to do things like the top 0.1%. Obviously, that doesn't stop in individual policies from being able to look at focuses of distribution.
Chancellor, I just wanted to ask you if you recognise this analysis that's out there. There's obviously increasing scrutiny about the top 1% and the top 0.1%, particularly as those on middle to higher incomes are starting to really feel the pinch. Do you think that it would be a good idea for the Treasury to start modelling this as well, so you can get a true distributive effect?
I think it is quite hard because of the numbers, but let me just sort of give you one example. Higher value council tax on properties more than £2 million affects less than 1%. Is it 0.6?
Just under 1%.
Yeah, okay, just under 1% of properties. The non-dom changes obviously affects a very small number of people, as does the change around treating carried interests as income rather than capital gains in private equity. So all of those are taxes paid by a very small number of the most wealthy people.
Would you commit to trying to look into that in the future?
As I say, it is quite hard just because of the numbers involved to have an accurate
We could have a dialogue
picture.
in writing about this, because I think it's an interesting point, and you
Well,
rightly raise
we
the
can,
challenges.
but I would just caution.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm recognising your
Yeah,
caution,
yeah.
and maybe it's a conversation we can have through official routes. Yeah.
Chancellor, just now you mentioned wanting to fix some of the tax relief so they operate as intended. You'll be aware, I think there's over 1,200 on the books, and I think only around 300 of them have ever been properly evaluated for their cost and their effectiveness. I presented a bill to Parliament called Tax Measures Evaluation Bill, where it commits the government to look into all of them. Can you commit to look into all the tax reliefs and making sure they are all working as intended?
So I hope you see in this budget and last year's budget, actually primarily due to the work from the former Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, who's now the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and the new Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. We've done some really good work on cracking down on tax avoidance and closing loopholes. I think it's going to save something like £10 billion a year by the final year of the forecast. And that is just getting the tax that we are already due, but we're not collecting today. And that's both debt and also
Just
BAU.
question, will you commit to looking at them all?
We're very happy.
1,200.
And if you've got any ideas, we're also always in the market, Mr. Dean. So we've already done a lot of work in this area, but the job is not done until there is a gap between the tax that is due and the tax that is paid. There is more work to do. So of course we'll carry on looking at all of those.
Thank you. I think you'd have a lot of support from both this committee and the sister committee, the Public Accounts Committee, which have doggedly tried to get to the bottom of this. So if you want to lean into that, I'm sure you'll get some help from Parliament.
I wonder if I could ask you about one small thing that happened after the budget, which is the US-UK trade deal over drugs, and it's going to cost apparently an extra £3 billion per year. There's been a lot of worry from NHS leaders about where that money's going to come from. Is that to come from within the existing Department of Health and Social Care budget?
That was part of the agreement in the spending review, that for this spending review period, that would be absorbed. The costs are actually quite low in the first couple of years, and that was part of the spending review settlement. But obviously, at future spending
The rest
reviews,
will be worked out in the next spending review.
Well,